seems that we actually have moved into a post-historical age, in the sense that for a while we could agree on a history. We were able to agree that one thing led to another. And the more complex our world becomes, and you see this in the conflict between various worldviews butted up against one another in cyberspace. Each has its equal and opposite experts. Each is able to articulate a robust argument. And so you begin to wonder, is it possible that the truth transcends either of these mutually exclusive narratives? In Richard Byrd's Chaos in Life, he says this is how you resolve a logical paradox. If the card says on one side, the statement on the other side of this card is false, and you flip it over, and the other side of the card says, the statement on the other side of this card is false, most people's heads are going to just explode. But what you can do is you add the dimension of time. You rotate the card, you spin it, and you assign a relative truth value to each face of the card as it swings into view. And so each side is half true and half false. And in that way, these competing worldviews are actually articulated in a woven pattern with one another. Like, for example, conservatives and liberals operate kind of like a bicep and a tricep. One assumes a role of dominance in the cultural discourse temporarily and moves the activity of culture in a particular direction, and then it swings the other way. What we're actually watching is a breath, a movement back and forth within a larger structure that includes both of those apparently conflicting realities. We're suffused with such complexity of experience now that the necessary way to adapt is by adding the dimension. In Buddhism, they call this the middle way. The middle way is not moderation. It's not the midpoint between two extremes. It is the point that appears at the middle when you project n+1 dimensional object into n dimensions. The middle path is the third point that defines a triangular plane. And it's learning to add a dimension or a perspective, a dimension being the description of the experience of a perception. By adding a dimension perspective, we're able to contain the paradox within a greater, more inclusive truth. And so the challenge before us seems to be, how do we not only identify with our own position, but recognize the validity of the counterposition against which we have defined ourselves? In ego development, they talk about there being a postmodern turn where the self-authoring modern individual recognizes that selfhood is defined only within the context of the vast unconscious, cannot be one without the other, and that therefore you must be all of the things that you believe yourself not to be.